Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. How's everyone going? I cannot escape all of these FFG X-Wing spoilers. They are coming in hard and fast over the past couple of weeks, but that's not a bad thing, I guess. I suppose going into December, into the holiday period, we'll start to slow down with this kind of stuff. I wasn't planning on making a video tonight, but here I am, because we got all the Wave 2 costings. We now know the points value of everything for the Resistance and the First Order that is currently going to come out, the Mining Guild TIE Fighter, and a couple of generic upgrades. So without further ado, let's dive right into these, starting off with those generic upgrades. And I've just highlighted them on the screen in front of us here. Just a couple of Force upgrades. We have Hate, the Dark Side upgrade that allows you to regain Force tokens for every piece of damage you suffer, and Predictive Shot, which forces your opponent to only roll the same amount of green dice, or at least up to the amount of dice of hits and crits combined that you roll. As in, you roll one hit, your opponent can only roll one green dice if you spend a Force token on your attack. Hate costs 3 points, Predictive Shot costs 4 points. No big surprises here. I think Predictive Shot does require you to get through those hoops. You've still got to get stuff in your bullseye firing arc, you've still got to spend Force tokens, but it will lead to some pretty big blowouts. The good thing about this is people are looking at this as something you can put on generic Force users like Inquisitors and Jedi Knights, and at the 4 point cost you can easily accommodate those kind of lists. Either your 4 Inquisitor, maybe 4 Jedi Knight, perhaps 5 based on what that ship's going to cost. We don't know what that's going to be just yet, but that's cool. We can do this with 6 points to spare on the 4 of Inquisitor build, so maybe a missile or something. There are options here, that's for sure. And just quickly moving over to the Scum and Villainy faction, we have the Mining Guild TIE Fighter. The cheapest one, our Mining Guild Sentry at Initiative 1, is only 24 points. I gotta say that this is quite surprising. I expected 25, 26 points, but no, 24 points, and only 25 points for our Mining Guild Surveyor, which is Initiative 2 with a talent, no less. Which seems very, very relevant. If we compare that to the TIE Fighters on the Empire, the Academy Pilot, their version of the Initiative 1 pilot, is 23 points. So for a 1 point increase, you get a slightly worse dial, but you can fly through rocks, and that just seems very, very relevant. This might just be the best blocker in the entire game at 24 points. It seems very, very competitive. Also, on the TIE Fighter for the Empire, you need to invest 26 points in order to get a talent. So now at 25 points, you get the Mining Guild Surveyor. So if we want to run Crack Swarms or Trick Swarms, that's now the best option. And indeed, the fact that you get that extra positioning might just make it better for that job anyway. Perhaps the Crack Swarm is going to return to the game of X-Wing. Also, our most expensive pilot here, Fullman Prouch at Initiative 4, is 32 points, which is a 2 point increase on all the Inferno Squadron pilots on the Empire who are Initiative 4 as well. So again, just a slight bit more, but that seems fair enough considering what this ship can do. I think in all seriousness, if this ship is going to see meta play, it's going to be with those generic pilots. The Mining Guild Surveyor at 25 points feels very, very competitive to me. Very keen to brew with that one myself. But enough about that, let's move on to the new factions for this wave, starting off with the Resistance. Top to bottom as they appear on this list, starting off with the MG-100 Star Fortress, the Resistance Bomber. We have our cheapest pilot at 63 points and our most expensive pilot at 70 points. Now previously, in terms of relative points cost, and I'll just make this disclaimer here, when I say relative points cost, I'm doubling the first edition points because first edition had half the points threshold of second edition. Our cheapest pilot was a relative 50 points, so it has increased quite dramatically. However, it is worth pointing out that the Star Fortress has 3 red dice out the front and the bow tie with 2 red dice. Also, 2 gunner slots. This is completely unprecedented and is going to lead to some very interesting things. I'm glad it's on the Resistance and not the Rebellion, because the idea of using Luke Skywalker alongside like a veteran turret gunner could be potentially problematic. However, we do have the option here of using Paige Tico alongside a veteran turret gunner, which means after you attack, you can move the arc and then shoot, which gives you a lot of information. Now, you are paying a premium for that ability, and you must be able to take a shot in the first place for that to work. Now, I know with this kind of stat line, yes, you're going to be able to cover just about every single different angle, but I don't think this is too problematic. If we had this kind of option on, say, a Millennium Falcon with 3 red dice primary, you'd be able to move the arc and shoot with perfect accuracy with a 3 red dice attack. But the Star Fortress only has a 2 red dice attack out of that turret. So I don't think this is going to be as problematic as that will be. Plus, it is quite expensive to buy into that kind of thing. The RZ-2 A-Wing is the new ship for the Resistance coming out in this wave. Our cheapest platform here is the Blue Squadron Recruit at 32 points, and it's only 2 points more than the RZ-1 A-Wing on the Rebellion. However, it is worth pointing out that yes, these cannot be fielded together anymore, so it's not just a case of how much they cost, it also matters what kind of environment they can be fielded in. The RZ-1 A-Wing going alongside all of the relevant Rebel stuff now is something worth considering when we're looking at the points. But what's most relevant about this is the fact that every pilot with a talent, which is every single one apart from the Blue Squadron Recruit, has 2 talent slots. And this is a bit of a hangover from first edition. The test pilot title, which was the original fix for the A-Wing, gave it 2 talent slots. That design has now moved on to the RZ-2, and the RZ-1 does not have that ability anymore, which seems fair enough. I think 2 talents is definitely more fitting of the Resistance. They're all about flashy flying. I am curious, and in the comment section, guys, what kind of upgrades would we do with this? Because we don't have a lot of the cool stuff that we had in first edition. We don't have Snapshot and Crackshot. I mean, we still have Crackshot, but not quite as consistent as the old Crackshot. The lack of Snapshot means we don't get extra attacks. I do like this A-Wing. I think it's a very interesting design, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure what to do with 2 talent slots. I think that's going to lead to some very interesting list building, that's for sure. Let's move down to the new Millennium Falcon, the Scavenged YT-1300, which I'll just remind you guys is a distinctly different ship from the Rebellion and Scum version. And it does have a strictly worse frame than the Rebellion version, but this is a pretty big points decrease. Resistance Sympathizer at 10 fewer points than the cheapest Rebel buy-in for this ship seems pretty significant. I'm not really sure what's going on here. It has that reduced stat line. It doesn't have missiles, but who cares? Who puts missiles in this thing anyway? That seems like a lot. I had the comment earlier today on YouTube that someone was saying, oh, this is kind of a signpost that FFG are going to reduce the cost of the Rebel YT-1300. I don't think that this costing is a reflection of anything, because I seriously doubt that FFG had time to react to the meta. This was probably designed well before Wave 1 came out anyway. It does seem like a much cheaper cost, I have to concede that. But once again, I will say this cannot be fielded on the Rebellion, and maybe it's a reflection of what's fair and balanced. Maybe the Resistance needs access to this to be more competitive. I'm not sure. I do love the fact that Rey's only 80 points. That's going to lead to some very powerful build. And Han Solo at 76 points. And I'll talk more about Han in a tick, but this is very, very relevant because of something that I particularly want to experiment with, Han Solo alongside Poe Dameron. The costing of the Rey Gunner, it does seem that the stars are aligning on this build, because we can get a really decent fat Han build alongside a decent kind of fat Poe build. And I really want to try that myself, so I'll have a play around with that one later. Speaking of which, moving down to the T-70 X-Wing, yeah! Poe Dameron, 68 points. That feels cheap. I was predicting at a sort of a low ballpoint conservative cost, 75 points at the very least. 68 for access to Initiative 6 and Push the Limits, or Poe the Limit as we're now calling it, is very, very competitive. I don't think I can stress to you guys how much the game is missing Push the Limits in terms of that kind of ridiculous power. So I think realistically Poe is going to be a real player in terms of meta play. I can't see him not be at this points cost. Apart from that, we have everything here that is expected of the T-70 X-Wing, everything it had in first edition, tech astromech modification, the configuration for the S-foils and the title. Our cheapest buy-in is the Blue Squadron Rookie at 46 points, which is just a fraction lower than it used to be. Our lowest buy-in used to be 48 points, so that seems fair enough. There's a reduction in points across the board on this. Look, honestly, I guess towards the end of first edition, this was not seeing much play. It definitely wasn't really a meta tier ship, so perhaps a points reduction is fair enough. But yeah, Poe at 68 points, watch out for that. You heard it here first. And just down to the unique upgrades, we have BB-8 at 8 points, which is fair enough. It's a points increase on what it used to be, but this ability, this kind of action economy, again, is not something that we're seeing much of in second edition. I don't think this is going to prevent BB-8 from seeing play. I think him on Poe Dameron in particular is going to be very, very powerful. The generic astromech with the fewer options is 5 points. Seems fair enough. M9G8, 7 points. R2HA at 4 points. And R5X3 at 5 points. The configuration for the X-Wing is free, as it should be. C-3PO, the crew card, 6 points. Yeah. I dig that. I dig that a lot. That feels very competitively costed for what C-3PO is doing. I think even without another resistance ship with a calculate action, I think this is really, really decent. The ability to get an extra calculate token after you calculate or coordinate, giving coordinate to any ship with a crew slot, yeah, could be fun. Right now, I'm particularly looking at this on the Falcon alongside your Poe Dameron or maybe a couple of A-Wings. Could be a lot of fun. Apart from that, Chewie is 5 points, Han Solo at 6 points, Rose Tico is at 9 points. That's all fair enough, that makes sense. Moving down to our gunners, Finn remains at 10 points, just like he used to be. Ray at 14 points, I like this a lot. This card essentially gives you access to Ray's pilot ability. It's a bit different, it works inside the turret attack, so you need to make sure that you have a ship with a turret, but currently every single option for her must have a turret anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And yeah, you can change blanks, get yourself another force token, feels well worth 14 points to me. Paige also 7 points, really, really good. I've spoken about her before. She's very similar to Agile Gunner in that you can just move your arc after you perform an attack. Agile Gunner doesn't require you to perform an attack, so Agile Gunner in that regard is a bit better. But Paige can also drop bombs, and you can react to the board state very, very well. Plus, talking about the Star Fortress, the fact that she can rotate the arc and then provide the veteran turret gunner with another shot seems really, really good. I do have a question. I have got a rules question, and if any of you guys out there in YouTube land can answer this for me, I'd be greatly appreciative. If, with Paige Tycho, you have a bow tie arc, as in one that faces one direction and directly back from that direction, like on the Star Fortress, can you shoot out of a mobile arc, rotate it 180, so the other end is now pointing this way, and then shoot at that end with veteran turret gunner? Because it is the opposite pointer, but it is the same arc. I actually don't know the answer to that question. That's a kind of weird interaction. But that's going to be something worth thinking about when looking at Paige Tico anyway. Apart from that, Heroic 1 point, Ferrosphere Paint 6 points, the Black One Title 2 points, Ray's Millennium Falcon 5 points. No surprises here. Ray's Millennium Falcon at 5 points definitely feels fair enough considering how much cheaper the frame is than it is on the Rebellion. Being able to rotate your arc even when you're stressed is going to be really, really potent, and it's going to make sure that you get those in-arc attacks happening turn after turn. Okay, let's move over to the First Order. Starting off with our TIE FOs, we have the Epsilon Squadron Cadet, our cheapest buy-in for this platform at 28 points. Used to be a relative 30 points, so gone down just a hair. Now, Midnight, this is a little bit difficult to quantify because Omega Leader used to be 42 points. However, Omega Leader used to be Paskill 8. Midnight is Initiative 6, the highest possible initiative we can have. So even though it is slightly more expensive, yes, I think that trade-off actually makes it feel cheaper. Which on one hand is a tad concerning considering how absolutely rampant Omega Leader was on the first edition meta. However, I will say all of the upgrade combos that worked with Omega Leader in first edition do not work in second edition. There's no comm relay. Duke does not correctly interact with Midnight anymore because you can't modify your opponent's dice with Duke if you have them locked, so you can't just reduce their green dice and just shoot them as hard as you like you could in the old edition. Probably a good thing. That was really, really annoying to fly against, so I'm glad to see that go. And apart from that, a slight points reduction and talents where we expect to see all our talents. Now, moving over to the TIE SF, it's very easy to look at this and go, wow, look at that massive point reduction. The trick here, guys, is the title for the TIE SF, which used to be free. It's represented now on the Special Forces Gunner, which is 10 points. This is very cool because it means you can take a stripped back version of the TIE SF, say you want a more missile focused build, which is what the burnt in ability is helping you work towards, and take a bit of a points reduction. It means the First Order, which only has 4 ships right now, has a nice bit of flexibility on one of its platforms in terms of list building. That's a very good thing. So our cheapest buy-in for this platform used to be a relative 46 points, a full 12 points more expensive than it is now. And Quick Draw used to be 58 points, now only 45. So there's been a pretty big reduction here. Quick Draw only gets 1 bonus attack anyway, so it seems fair enough. Plus, if you attach the gunner, well, you wouldn't get that bonus anyway because we are now limited to everything in X-Wing only having 1 bonus attack. So look, I've got no complaints here. It's clear to me that FFG did intentionally bring down the power level of this. Also with the added bit of flexibility to give them a more missile-centric build, it could be a lot of fun to build with. Speaking of missiles, the TIE Silencer. Now, I made the comment during the last video that the TIE Silencer wasn't going to have missiles or torpedoes because they never used them in the movies. I made a mistake. No, Kylo blew up the hangar bay with Black One. It slipped my mind for some reason. And as a result, TIE Silencers now have torpedoes and missiles. Cool, but it has lost the system slot, or the sensor slot as it's now referred to. Kylo ran at 82 points. Previously, Kylo was at a relative cost of 70 points. So it's a pretty big increase. Plus, Kylo has gone down to Initiative 5. Look, he does have Force tokens now. It can't be overstated how powerful that is, especially on aces. But it does seem a tad harsh. The only thing I can think of is Kylo must have done well during playtesting. Remember, the entire environment of 2nd edition has changed, so that must attribute to that in some way. At the actual 70 points is Blackout, and Blackout's moved up to Initiative 5, so that feels fair enough. Our cheapest buy-in, the Sinar Jameis Engineer, 56 points, as opposed to a relative 52 points from 1st edition. The entire platform has had a points increase. But look, the Fang Fighter had the same treatment. It must just be a case of how well the ship performs. Plus, we must remember, guys, it does have that auto thrusters ability baked into it, and it cannot be overstated how utterly powerful that is. I think people are in danger of underrating Kylo because he is so much more expensive than he used to be. But I don't think you need to stack on a whole heap of upgrades to make this ship relevant like you used to, and I think this is still going to see meta play regardless. Okay, moving over to the Epsilon class shuttle. Our cheapest pilot here, the Starkiller base pilot, is 56 points, down from a relative 60 points, so a slight decrease here. Our most expensive pilot has gone down from 68 points to 64. Different pilots, so not that easy to compare, but we do not have Kylo Ren in the pilot seat this time. Probably the most relevant thing about this, though, is the fact that it has 3 crew slots. This is something previously that only the Scum faction has access to, and it's something that they probably couldn't have done in 1st edition because it's an effect that they probably didn't want to give to the Empire. But with the First Order, there's a much smaller pool of unique crew they can use. Probably the most relevant thing I can think of here is the ability to use this with Snoke and Kylo Ren together. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think Snoke and Kylo really play into the same game strategy. I'd be interested to see something like Snoke and Hux together, or Kylo, Hux and Phasma, or Thanison. There's a lot of cool options here. And basically every First Order crew that we get from this point on is going to beg the question, okay, is this going to be some broken combo with 2 other crew or Snoke or something? That's going to be really, really interesting. Apart from that, the frame hasn't changed all that much. It's still going to be that awesome support roll that hits with 4 dice. Going to be a lot of fun. Moving down to the unique upgrade options, just a small handful here. In the crew slots, we have Phasma at 5 points, General Hux at 10 points, Kylo at 11 points, Thanison at 4, and Supreme Leader Snoke at 13. Kylo and Snoke particularly interest me here. Snoke at 13 feels like it's really, really powerful. I am consciously aware though that the only way to really abuse his effect is to get other Force tokens onto the platform. The only way to do that is to use him alongside Kylo. That combination costs 24 points, doesn't feel hyper efficient. And the thing about Kylo is to get his ability working, you need ships that can consistently get across crits, and that's not really a swarm. And Snoke kind of wants to be alongside a swarm because flipping your opponent's dial face up means you can block more effectively. So I'm not sure what the best way to use these guys is going to be. It might just be a case of we need other crew cards to combo with them to really make them work effectively. Nevertheless, I like both of these effects by themselves anyway. Snoke perhaps a little bit too expensive, but Kylo at 11 points, I absolutely feel like he will see play. He was dirt cheap in 1st edition, criminally so. And the fact that he's 11 points and gives his platform a Force token feels fair. I think it's a much healthier place for Kylo to sit. The Special Forces Gunner we've already mentioned. Fanatical at 2 points. Fanatical at 2 points for a passive offensive buff feels really, really powerful. Biohexacryptic codes at 1 point. This is really, really cool. We were talking about this just the other day, actually. The ability to jam your opponent from across the board is a huge amount of upside if you manage to pull that off. I will say, though, that it is worth pointing out that, yes, you've got to spend a target lock on one of your opponent's ships. And it must be said that any card that asks you to do that should give you a pretty big payoff, because just spending a target lock for its regular effect is already really powerful. But remember, you can just lock one of your friendly ships at the start of the game and then coordinate them late game from any way you like. There's a lot of upside with this card. I feel like 1 point is frankly undercosted. I was expecting at least 5 or 6, so Interesting to see what kind of play that has on the meta. Maybe this is just something that we have to accept that the First Order has. This is going to be glued onto the Epsilon class shuttle, if you want my opinion. Also, hyperspace tracking data, the same card that it was in first edition, will pretty much have the same impact. I can't see this being really powerful. Yes, there's an Epsilon class shuttle pilot that allows you to deploy your TIE fighters at range 1 to 2. I just think that strategy is a little bit cute. Probably the most relevant part is the fact that you can deploy at any initiative. Maybe if you have to put this on a Starkiller base pilot and deploy at initiative 6 alongside your aces, so you're not telegraphing to your opponent where your Epsilon class shuttle is going to be. That could be good, but it's not really the tech upgrade I'm really curious about here. It's more the biohexer cryptic codes and pattern analyzer. I think those are the two that are seriously going to see meta play. And that's it. That is all the costings we have for Wave 2 of 2nd edition. So guys, you know what this means? Comment section below, list. After this Sunday's Hangar Bay video, we're going to start covering First Order and Resistance lists as well. I'm so excited to brew with these. Going to be a lot of fun. I've got a few ideas about what I think the meta is going to do in terms of these two factions, but we'll talk about that in a later video. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit. Please consider supporting our Patreon. Thank you so much to all of my existing patrons. Can't thank you guys enough. I'll catch you guys in the next video.